Hi everyone, welcome to Freedom Friday. We are doing another presentation today on the centralized, basically the centralized world we live in versus the decentralized world. And I'm just giving a bit of a view of to what decentralization might look like, a little bit of a tour back into history, looking at cycles and looking at what I feel we need to do and what we could expect out of a more decentralized world, and and how could this come about. So um, I'm just going to firstly, I've just got to share my screen. I've just got to bring up my, just bear with me while I bring up my tab. Are you able to see that, Gerald?
Yep. Yep.
Oh, good. Okay, so I've titled this The Pendulum Swing from Centralization to Decentralization. Um, a decentralized world is actually a people-centric world. So, as the name, as the word implies, um, rather than having a single point of control, a single point of failure, a single point of information, we have it's about decentralization as multiple points of failure, if you like, and or I suppose you could say multiple points of touch points. Basically, that's us. Basically, it's a redistribution of resources, of information, so that we're not getting our information from a sole source of truth, and we're not being basically harvested or tracked and traced in everywhere we go, and everything we do gets recorded to a centralized body. So I've called it the pendulum swing because throughout history um, there have been swings back and forth from tyrannical kind of control back to the people. This has gone on and on throughout history. Empires come, they build up, they get to a certain point, and then they collapse because it becomes so corrupt, and the people become so desperate and angry at their situation that they rise up, and then um, governments, countries, empires, they fall, and then we start the cycle over again. So we can have a look at the current. I believe we need to focus on the systems. We need, uh, people can get caught up in the people and what they're doing or not doing, but really, what's really running the world are systems, and these have been linked together in a very clever way, so that we don't actually see the problem, or the problem seems so huge that we feel powerless to do anything about it. So these systems, we need to reform these systems, and then once we reform those, then the people that are sort of maintaining them or creating them, they also will go as well. So the monetary and financial system is the key. It is the head of the of everything else that happens. This flows from the financial system. Uh, specifically the central banking system. And the central banking system is highly tied into the corporate system. It's also tied into that whole legal corporate system that they're all intermeshed into the matrix. Matrix is actually quite a good word for it. And at the very top of this, we have these super hedge funds, what I call super hedge funds. It's BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity. We have mentioned these before, and they are really overseeing the whole system. They make much more decisions other than just financial. They're also playing a huge role in this reset that we're going through right now. And then we have in politics, we have centralisation in politics in our government, national governments, local governments, even our councils are also have a centralised control. It's also very apparent in our education system through the universities as well as the schooling system. Whereas, in the education curriculum is decided by a central body, and then that is basically rolled out to the students. So this is all part of educating, or should I say, indoctrinating people into following the protocols that they wish to maintain. It's also become very highly apparent in the health system, and I would say also the pharmaceutical industry has become very, very powerful now. And so again, that has been centralized through the hospital system, through the doctors, through a hierarchical tiered control. The media, basically in America, there's only, I think it's 3 companies that are basically running all of their media. And I think that those 3 are all basically following the same script because BlackRock has an ownership over them, and because they are key shareholders, they make sure that they follow the party line. So this is how even apparent opposition are also playing to the same script. They're playing controlled opposition, just like happens in our governments as well, with Labour and National and Liberals and Conservatives. It's all the levers are being pulled from the top. Those who hold the money, those who hold the gold. We're seeing it now in the urbanization of all countries around the world are being heavily urbanized. They are creating apartments, a lot of apartments in a concentrated area, and creating these so-called smart cities. Big energy is another big centralized control. So what they do is they create subsidiary companies, but they all feed back to a parent company, and ultimately it feeds back to BlackRock that oversees all of them. So we're seeing it big time now with energy, with what's happening in the world, with fossil fuels, with oil, coal, gas, natural gas, and this direction that they're trying to herd us towards, a so-called clean green economy, which is highly deficient. I think they're leading us to something that could never deliver the energy we need right now on purpose, to create an energy crisis, which is basically for more control. When people are without power, without electricity, when they can't heat their homes, when they can't get power their industries, then they're going to cry out for assistance, and then they will, basically they'll have to take the bitter pill that's given to them. So they're leading us off the cliff on purpose, I believe. And the same thing is happening with food and big agriculture, the fertilizing companies. We're seeing food being grown on a mass scale. A lot of farms are being bought up, and they're all being monopolized. You've seen it with certain people in America, like Bill Gates. He's buying up. He's the biggest landholder in America by far, and he owns huge, equivalent to several states of land over there. So they're up to something, and they're experimenting with GMOs. Well, they're not experimenting anymore. They're actually, all those crops on those big farms are GMO grown now. Religion is also another centralized system, basically headed up by the Catholic Church, and it's really just all another form of control, basically. And so these are all tied together. I've spent quite a bit of time joining dots between all these systems, and as you look deeper, you realize there is no conspiracy, or if there is a conspiracy, it is a conspiracy to basically to control. Really, you could say on one hand there is no conspiracy, but really certain people are in power that are pulling the levers, that are basically running the show in such a way that, and because it's done in secret, that is the conspiracy. Conspiracy means to conspire without the people's knowledge. That's simply all it means. So there is a conspiracy going on, and it's now coming to light. So as it comes to light, then it's conspiracy no more. So then we've got a big part of this is the United Nations Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset. This is what they've termed this this new what they call a green economy. They call it the fourth industrial revolution. It's also called the fourth turning. It's got a few names, and basically climate change is their reason. That's the problem. That's the problem that they've created, or they've. It's not so much a problem they've created. Well, they're creating it in the sense they're creating a narrative that we have caused the climate to change, and to a tiny, tiny degree, it may be true, very, very tiny. But I do believe there is a pollution problem, and there is certainly, I believe, a natural climate change going on. Clearly, nothing is static in our solar system and out in space, and so there definitely is a change going on in the climate, and I think it's just been basically being manipulated to make it out as though we are the cause of that. So there's a massive energy overhaul going on, as I mentioned before. Big energy is they wanting to move away from fossil fuels, which in itself is not necessarily on a surface is a good idea. But when they're moving us into this so-called green economy that has not got the infrastructure to handle the load that would be required, it's absolutely going to fail, and it's going to fail, I believe, on purpose, and they could blame it on whatever, but I can see it being if it's allowed to run too long, it will become a major calamity. I do know that there's forces at work that, there are those positive forces at work here that I think will arrest it before it becomes too bad. But we're seeing the beginnings of it now, and Russia gets blamed, and CO2 gets blamed. They need an enemy. They need an enemy, and it could be CO2, it could be Russia, it could be whatever. The polar bears are disappearing, or whatever they used. So everything has been restructured. Food is they're restructuring food too, so that we all basically eat bugs. They're trying to eliminate meat. You've seen what's happening in Holland. There's huge protests going on there. The farmers are really risen up there. And it's happening now in Spain and Germany. There's massive changes going on in the world. The powers that be want to confiscate their land. That's at the heart of the issue, so that they can bring people into more urbanization, into their smart cities, and then they're going to use the land for their own purposes. So it's all about land redistribution and land ownership as well. So this is going to have a big effect on transportation. Obviously, there's a big drive towards electric vehicles. There's a big drive towards public transport and that. But again, there's not a lot of enough funds to do this, and it's just an accident waiting to happen. And the way they're going to control this is through the central bank digital currencies, and having a one world money, a one world government that runs a one world money system. And this is how they're going to do it, through CBDC and a digital ID. So this is a problem for us. But it's coming out in the open now, and it is getting seen for what it is. And a lot of people are starting to wake up. There is the saying, one ring to rule them all, which is really what a one world government theme phrase could be. So there is also a social movement towards socialism, and there's aspects of socialism that I think actually are quite valid. But really, in their agenda, it's a stepping stone to communism, and then from communism, they're just one step away from fascism. So, using excuse me, I'm just going to move to a new spot. So I believe there are aspects of social welfare that are absolutely required, and I'm not believing in a pure capitalist society either, though certainly not the way we've had it. When it's so centralized, capitalism is not a great model either, because a world that is run by a few cartels, with the illusion that we're in a capitalist society or free market economy, is absolute bollocks. We're not in a true free market economy at all. Nothing is free, and everything is being controlled by the puppeteers at the top. So what we need is a balance. Interestingly enough, I wrote an article about. I actually got it here. I'll come back to that in a minute, actually, and talk about the communism thing, because pure communism can be actually quite beneficial when it's done. It was always designed to be an equality or an egalitarian society without sort of excessive government control. but obviously that's not happening today. But I will come back to that in a slide or two. But what we've got to look at, I think we need to look at history. We need to look at historical cycles so that we get a context of where we are in time right now. And if you start looking back, and I have done this, you'll see that usually every 10 years or so, there's a minor or quite a severe recession. But every 25, certainly between every 10 to 25 years, there's always going to be either a minor or major recession in the world, or could be even quite a depression. But every 50 years, there is a monetary reset. Like you go back 51 years, there was a major monetary reset when the American dollar was taken off the gold standard. So that is quite a major monetary reset. If you look back in time, every 50 years or so, there's a bigger reset. It's not just like a recession, it's a bigger monetary policy reset. Then if you look every 100 to 120 years back, there is an even larger, there's a bigger economic reset. If you look back into that time frame, that's when the Federal Reserve was created. So it's bang on this cycle. That was a major event for the world, the Federal Reserve, because all the central banks then that got set up throughout the world all tie back to the Federal Reserve. That's when taxation became mandatory. It's when they started doing social welfare. Lots of things happened around 100 to 120 years ago. Then when you look back further and go to 240 to 260 years back, there's usually a major geopolitical reset. And in that time frame is when the American Constitution was done in 1776. So then you go back 250 odd years before that, there was I think it was the Spanish Inquisition and the Protestant. There was a big church, if you like, reset, and if you trace it back roughly every 240 to 260 years, you can count it all the way back to time immemorial. Then if you go back 2,100 to 2,600 years, there's always a huge social and humanity reset. And that can entail just about every area of life. This is in keeping with with astrological cycles. These are perfectly tuned in time to major astrological shifts in our solar system, in our galaxy, and even in the universe. And then you go back 12 to 13,000 years, there is what they call a new age, which is a type of reset as well on a galactic sort of level. And again, this is all astrological. It's all based on astrology, astrological cycles of the sun, and other heavenly bodies, the great central sun, because our solar system is revolving around a great sun, a great central sun beyond our own sun. And it completes a circuit every 24 to 26,000 years, which is double the 12 to 13,000 years. So that is a full cycle of our solar system around the great central sun. That's what I call the solar reset. And hence why we're having a lot of climatic changes now. And in fact, this is why we're having such huge changes here on Earth. And then there's resets every 240 to 260 years as well 2.4 to 2.6 million years is what I call a universal reset. And you notice these are all fractals of this 24 to 26, 240 to 260, 2400, 2600. It's the same fractal. So it's like little cycles within bigger cycles, but they're all on the same basic mathematical formula. So all cycles and changes on Earth, which is us below, if you like, are mirrored in space. So hence the saying, as above, so below. That's where it comes from. So whatever is happening in space or in the galaxy is also being mirrored on Earth, and vice versa. And so we are, without our awareness, we're actually being affected by these. It's like you could call them energy cycles, or a galactic energy wave is another way to describe it. And as these waves start to wash over our Earth, it creates huge upheaval and huge changes. But it is actually for good. It's a good thing. And what's happening is the few power-hungry mongrels that are on the Earth, they know about this. So what they're trying to do is take advantage of that for their own purposes. Basically, they're trying to hijack it rather than just allow it to become a natural kind of evolutionary, beautiful kind of change. They are throwing a spanner in the works to try and get us distracted from this. This is what they really want to distract us from, is us plugging into these cycles. Then we all understand who we really are. We'll understand the bigger picture of what's going on the Earth, and we will not be worried about these relatively minor inconveniences like money and things, because we would become fully empowered as a galactic species, and we'll take our rightful place in the universe. So that's really, to me, what all this is distraction for, getting us to look at who we are and why we're here. Always comes down to that. So now what's happening on Earth is we're going digital in every way. The internet is also a centralized system, and it was designed for this time, for this reset. They knew that as we get to use it, and as everyone was on the internet, it would be like shooting fish in a barrel. It's basically like wrapping a net around us, literally, a digital net. And then once we're utilizing it sufficiently and we're forging ahead, then suddenly they throw the hammer down. And that's where we're at now. And so the idea is to trap us in there with nowhere to go. Once we're all reliant on digital technology, then what they're now doing is trying to implement their plans so that we then have to follow the technology that they roll out to us. By crashing the system, then we become desperate. So we then supposedly just take the bait and we take what they offer us. So I only suggest this when we know the plans so that we can pivot from that. I'm not suggesting that we should dwell on this or just think we're screwed and that's it and give up. No, this is designed to empower us, but we have to tread the fine line. We have to just know the plans, not let the plans swallow us up. And that is very tricky for people, especially when they're waking up. So we have to find the balance. We have to run across the slippery pole and not, it's not easy to find our balance in these times, but this is what we have to do. And under great duress, people will find a way. So the metaverse is really the next planned evolution of the internet in my studies. The metaverse is will remove us more and more from our natural roots, from our natural origins. So again, this is why climate change is really like a demonization of nature. It's like making out like nature's so harsh and it's so uncompromising, and so we have to be protected from all of this. It's all couched in terms of our safety and protection, when really they've got an ulterior motive that's completely different. So how they can do this is through technology. Obviously, the same technology that we're looking at to free us is also the technology they are using to try and further control. Using a central bank digital currency, creating a digital ID, which is not going well for them, but this is what they're trying to do. Connecting us all to 5G, because that can handle all this digital data that will be needed. And then they will run it using AI. And not only run by AI, but our world will also be operated by artificial intelligence, both externally and internally. So, robots and artificial intelligent manufacturing plants and AI that can track and trace, using the CBDC. So it's all intermeshed. So they're building out the infrastructure at pace now. 5G is now basically live in most countries around the world. So they're working at a global plan. So this is going to centralize our data, our movements, our transactions, and our information. And that's really the prize. If they can get enough of us trapped in there, then we're basically easy pickings. This is exactly what's happening in China now. It's already happened in China. That's why they use China as the model. So they think they can do it to the West, but I think they're now reaching stiff opposition. And I don't believe they will succeed in the end. So all technology has duality built in it, like anything in the world. It is dual in nature. So it has a positive and negative. They are just trying to use the negative aspects for their own gain. But we have to remember that there's a heads and a tails. So we just have to find the positive in this, and it's hidden in plain sight. It's with us. It is us, and it starts with us internally, and then we grow from the inside out. So our mindset and energy, which is our consciousness, our spirituality, if you like, is the deciding factor. We decide what happens when we know what's going on, and when our awareness reaches to a certain level, then we will not play this game. We will exit the matrix, and we will go into a decentralized society, and that is what we're on the cusp of now. So we have to have our energy. Our personal energy is so important in this. This is why we get bombarded with so much false and misleading information, because it divides our mind. And if our mind is divided, then all we'll see is a divided world, and we'll give up. But there's a few people on the earth that are bucking that, and they're absolutely rising up, and they've got a very open and strong mindset, and they're also using their heart and their feet and hands as well. And that's what we need. We need action as well as good intentions. So people, it comes down to people. People create and maintain this technology, and the technology is totally programmable. And people say to me, well, well, the CBDC, the blockchain, it's programmable, so we've got no say in it. But it can be programmed to be either centralized and as a control mechanism, or it can be programmed to be the opposite. So it comes down to the people realizing what they're creating, and that they're actually creating their own demise. And as they become aware of that, they're not going to keep creating and maintaining this technology, because the people that are manning it and creating it are probably just thinking about providing for their families and putting food on the table and keeping a job. And this is why the system becomes very powerful. And this is where it makes it so hard for people to find the conspiracy, because these people are doing this willingly. So this is why we need to get the awareness up and the information and truth out there, so these people can then realize what they're actually contributing to, and then they will just withdraw. And it's happening already. A lot of people in power, in some middle management power, are now saying stuff that I'm not playing this game anymore, and are resigning or leaving their jobs, or going to something else, doing something positive. And this is where we're at right now. So I have to bring in this principle or law of rhythm into this, because again, this always comes back to natural laws. Just like you saw with the whole historical cycles, that is really the law of rhythm being played out over longer periods of time in time cycles. And the law of rhythm says that the measure of the pendulum swing to the left is the measure of the pendulum swing to the right. So what that basically is saying is that the more that we get off track and more the pendulum goes, say, to the bad end, I'll say bad in inverted commas, more we go to the negative, the deeper and more decrepit the world gets, the more with more speed, and the further it will swing the other way. And so the world has reached its peak of centralization now. And that's why people are rising up, and it is now swinging back to the right, with the eventual outcome that it will come into the center. But that's us coming into our center, and then understanding the cycles and adjusting ourselves accordingly. But this is what's happening now, is that this pendulum of time is swinging back towards the people. And as I said, this has happened through time immemorial. So the earth will survive, we will carry on, but maybe quite a few souls might leave the planet because they've done their job. But nonetheless, those of us who are here, awake and aware, they will make sure that things come into more of a balance. So history often repeats. It used to say history always repeats, but I'd say it often repeats, but if it doesn't repeat, it's at least rhyming. And rhyme is a word that comes from the word rhythm and rhyme. And so what we're seeing now is history really repeating from Babylonian and Sumerian times, from Egyptian times, from Roman times, from Greek. And now we're seeing the fall of the American Empire, which is really just the Roman Empire remodeled. Really, that's all it is. So there's nothing new under the sun. Everything, we've gone through all of this before. And so that's where the saying comes, nothing new under the sun. These are just repeating patterns, repeating cycles. And natural order will always come from chaos. They have a saying, order from chaos, but that's their order is basically full-on fascist control order. But there's also a natural order, and nature will have the final say in this. So this law of rhythm affects everything in life, including economics, politics. Every system on the planet has to is complying and abiding by this law. So it's the rise and fall. That's what it is. And economics have now reached their peak of centralization, and now we're moving to decentralization. Politics as well. Every system we've been through is now starting to crumble, if you haven't noticed. So nothing is random. There is nothing random. They want to say everything's random and it's unconnected, and everything's just that's just a coincidence. Or no, nothing is random. This is all in a higher degree of perfection and order is happening in a natural sense. So the key is to be balanced in all the highs and lows. Really, that's what we've got to do. We can't get too excited. We can't get too depressed. We have to follow the middle road, the middle path. That's really what's required right now, I believe. So the life and death cycle really follows this natural law. That really is a perfect example of how this cycle of rhythm follows. It's all about life, death, rebirth, and then life, and then death of the body only, but rebirth through the soul. The soul is always cycling. And then when we really understand this, we will not have fear of death anymore. It will be gone. They use the fear of death as one of their main principles of control. So if we read the past macro cycles really well, we will be prepared. So we can prepare ourselves now, because we are about to enter the golden age. We are on the cusp of entering into the age of enlightenment. And with that, forerunner is decentralization. It is an evolution. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. So time is really the measurement of cycles or ages, or you could say revolutions around or with the sun, on our suns. So what does decentralization look like? What does it actually mean to be decentralized? Well, free market economics without central control, without monopolies and cartels and the black rocks and the central bank printing the money. That's what it means. It means money and wealth is distributed evenly throughout. And this will happen once private ownership, private central banking is smashed. That is the main physical reason why we have such a upset economic system, and why so many people are impoverished, why the poverty gap between rich and poor is all through central banking. So imagine if the central banks, what they own, if they redistributed all the funds to the people evenly, everyone would have in dollar value way more than $1 million. I only use that as an example. I don't mean that everyone should have $1 million, but it's just an idea that there's that much wealth in the world. It's ridiculous. And really, because we've created the world collectively, we should have cooperative ownership of it. So that to me is what that will be an economic and financial material outcome of decentralization. Along with, we'll have a lot more freedom on every level. The powers that be do not want us to be free, because if we are truly free, then we're not controllable. It's as simple as that. So more freedom of choice, movement, speech. We will have freedom on every level in a decentralized world. And with the removal of such draconian systems, people will become instantly more considerate of everybody because there's nothing to fight against. Then there's no enemy, there's no bogeyman, there's no fear. It's going to be a much more open society. There'll be much more transparency and personal privacy. When I say privacy, I mean we do not need central banks knowing our every transaction, and we do not need them to hold our data. That should be an absolute priority and primary is that. So we're entitled to having our own privacy in our own homes, going about our business when we're doing no harm. There is no reason why a central bank should have our data and track our movements or our spending. So cooperative structures and DAOs is just one thing that we could see within our business structures. We will have things like what Everich is attempting to do, which is create cooperative shared ownership businesses, and DAOs, which is decentralized autonomous organizations. They run automatically. They don't run with people. They're just basically running self-autonomously. It'll be a sharing economy, and if money is still created, it will be created for the people by the people, or through a government base that is an enlightened government, or a government that is basically on the blockchain that cannot be manipulated. So there will be no central banks, no private Western central banks, period. There may be local banks, there may well be local banking, but there will be things like food banks, and there will be other types of banks that we can have, storage of food, and local community working together, making the decisions for the community. And that is a decentralized society, when local community has a say in their own community, growing their own food, making decisions at that level through community leaders. That is what decentralization looks like to me. And where truth is honored and revered in education and media and any of the communication type outlets or inlets, we need to bring truth back. As when I say truth, I mean truth of objective truths, teaching the natural laws, teaching how energy works, teaching spirituality, teaching how to grow food, teaching truth of who we are and who our ancestors really are, our galactic brothers and sisters, and our connection to everything, and our potential as a soul spirit. We need to teach all of that, and we need to tear down this veil that the media is holding up, which is really just a whole bunch of propaganda. So if these central they use the term to us, if we've got nothing to hide, we have nothing to fear. Well, I'd turn it back on them and I'd say, if they've got nothing to hide, then they have nothing to fear either. So we can play that game. So they seem to have a lot to hide right now, and so I think we need to keep the pressure on and expose some of these systems and people that are clearly not working in our best interests. So how can we create this world? How can we decentralize these systems? How can we create the world that we would wish to see for our future generations. And obviously, I'm going to mention first the blockchain, the decentralized blockchain, and the code that creates it for distribution of money and information and basically everything. So the CBDC runs on a centralized blockchain. The decentralized blockchain runs on a completely different code. And this is why they say the value is in the protocol. They use this terminology a lot in crypto. And that protocol, we run our lives on protocols. These are the immutable codes that cannot be changed. Our DNA is a protocol. Our DNA is code as well, and I often mention it. So, what we need is coding on the blockchain that creates these immutable, decentralized, automatic distributions of money, information, shared resources. AI that is programmed for automation only. It's completely benign embedded within the code. It automates to benefit us through freeing up our time and energy, doing tasks that we don't want to do or we're not so good at. Basically, AI has a very beneficial aspect of this for automation. And I'm not talking about AI that's tracking us and tracing us. And again, it comes back to coding protocols and how the AI is actually set up by, obviously it's being set up by people in power right now who are using it in a nefarious way. So as the system comes down, those people will soon be removed once they're exposed. We need to return. This is where I start getting into a kind of socialism, or to some people, communist kind of viewpoint. I'm not a communist, that's for sure. I'm anything but. It's certainly in the way that is presented in the China model. But what's wrong with us people at least co-owning the key elemental assets that make this world, this natural world, and that being land, water, and power, and primarily. I think it's a crime that a bank can make so much money off a mortgage. I mean, what gives them the right to make money off the land when it's our land? I mean, it's our collective land. So it's not about ownership of the land; it's about custody of the land. It's simply about sharing the land. It's not about any one body or person or corporation owning land for profit. That's what I'm talking about. So if everyone gets their plot of land, we will de-urbanize the world. We will go back out onto the land, and without money worries, we can do it very, very easily, and it could happen overnight once the central power is collapsed. And then no one should own water as well, but we should have access to pure water without having to pay ridiculous rates, the rates to the councils. And now in New Zealand with the Three Waters thing, that is another centralized power play. The government should never have control over such an important resource as water, especially when they're throwing toxic chemicals into it and making us drink it. It's absolute crime. And our power, electricity, ultimately free energy will come. It's just a matter of time. The technology is already there. It's already in the ether. It's already in the Akashic records. Once Tesla had cracked that nut, it's there. It's just been subverted, but it will come. It's coming. So no more interest or mortgages with banks. Like usury or interest is another crime against humanity. Should just be gone. No more fractional reserve banking, which is another phrase for Ponzi scheme. The fractional reserve banking is basically based on the debt model, and when they print money or when they bring money into existence, they're also bringing debt into existence. And then when the system starts to freeze up, that's why they have to keep printing money. They have to keep printing money to keep the whole merry-go-round going. The more money they print, then there's more debt. So they're just piling debt upon debt upon debt, and eventually the music's going to stop, and we're going to be left holding the bag unless we do something about it real soon. So fractional reserve banking is a complete and utter Ponzi scheme in the purest sense. No money private corporations printing, no private corporations printing money. As I've said this before, no central banks. Governments and councils go on the blockchain. They can become a DAO. They could become or blockchain driven. Voting can go on the blockchain. It's completely secure and immutable. That's where I see governments going, and even countries as a whole will eventually have everything on the blockchain. Return energy production to the people, absolutely, what I've kind of mentioned up here, and bringing sort of experiment with free energy, wireless, true wireless energy is not harmful. It is harmless when it's at the right frequency, when it's at the right hertz frequency. I'm not talking about the hertz frequency of a 5G. There's a big range of energy on the energy spectrum, and there's energy that could power our cars, our homes, and actually be beneficial for the body as well. People don't realize that, but it's true. And so people will rise when enough experience the pain. They will eventually rise. And when the pressure is on and people are getting hammered, eventually they will rise. And that's what they're doing now, because now they're getting directly affected. They're withholding people to do their business, to grow their own food, so they can put food on their own table. The pain is really ratcheting up, and we can see it. The collapsing supply chain is creating a lot of pain, but this is what will help people see that we're actually living in a great lie. The whole world is inverted. It's inversion, making good into bad and bad into good. It's a very insidious way of controlling us. So basically, I'm going to end with on a super positive note by, basically, I believe that what we've got to do is integrate our energy and embody our spirit, really. Everything is energy. Everything is energy, and that energy is connected to everything else. So this is a key timeless truth that once we know, no, we don't just believe, once we know in our heart of hearts, that we are energy and we are an embodiment of spirit, and we can integrate all these elements that are sort of very piecemeal to us at the moment. But as we do that, we will rise very, very quickly. And it really starts in our homes, starts with us, with our families and our homes and our basic intentions and purpose for life. So we need to get back to basics. And to me, life can be very, very simple. Well, actually, to me, true life is simple in its purest sense. But it just seems very complex at the moment because we're adhering to all these centralized systems that are designed to be complex. But life in its natural form is not. It is very simple and it is very basic. And that's where true enjoyment will come. So we need, I made this little phrase, there's the phrase chop wood, carry water. But if we chop wood, light fire, carry water, breathe intentional air, embody your spirit. And that's encompassing all that phrase to me is a perfect example of what it would be like to be living a simple life. And it's integrating the key elements that make us, that create us and maintain us here on earth. I also believe, we need to start honoring spirituality, which is really just honoring energy, honoring our energy. Our spirit animates our energy. Without the spirit, without a soul, we wouldn't have a body that we would be able to carry around. So it's what animates us. We need to remember to be anchored to earth. It's all great to have the spirituality, but we need an anchor. We need to embody spirit. We need to work with earthly things, material things. There's nothing wrong with that to me. We need to work with the earth systems. And to me, otherwise we're no earthly good to anyone else. If we're just all floating around in the clouds, well, we're really not on earth, honoring our vehicle, honoring our body vehicle. So we need to reconnect to people, to communities. So as we start connecting to people, to our inner circle, our family, our loved ones, then from that it extends to communities, and then from that it extends to the cities, and then to the earth as a whole, the whole planet. And we also need to remember to connect to our heart as well as our mind. Our heart often gets left out. It's the central, it's our real true central control system for everything else. And we need which are naturally decentralized. We can model nature, and by modeling nature, then we can create systems that are true ecosystems or eco-like. Because if we use nature's example, then we will not have these centralized control systems. They just will not exist. Everything will be eco system, which inherently means nature's decentralization. And we could see God, for instance, instead of this religion and this fearful God, God could just be seen as a field of energy, a field of intelligent energy, a fabric, if you like, a fabric of energy, which we are literally immersed in. We are in the mind of God, which is really just a field. And it's like an energetic matrix. And in this sense, the creator, there is no just creator and creation. It's actually both. The creator and the creation are one when it comes to God, or the word God, which is a highly contentious and maligned word, mainly because of what religion has conditioned people to believe. So really, this is not real rocket science, but it's difficult to do because we've come through such a traumatized world and such a conditioned world. We've lost the thread of all these key truths that are truly fundamental to life. So it all starts with one. You, me, and everyone is one with the individual. This is why they're trying to create this collectivism. Collectivism is not unity. That is all virtual signaling, and we all pull together and the team of 5 million. And once you start seeing it, you'll see the phrases they use. It's all about, if you're not in the team, then you're on the outer and you're gone. And this is really what their version of communism is all about. They want to demonize the individual, and they want to divide us all up. So then if we have no battery power, if we have no energy, then the whole world will have no energy because we'll all be defunct. So we need to reclaim and honor our individuality, and this is why we need to act with critical thinking and with our own sense of independence, but not for selfish reasons, for selfless reasons, for interdependence. That to me is the goal. And this is what I think decentralization can create, because once we've got our power back and we're not having to worry about money and we don't have Big Brother breathing down our necks, all of this will naturally spring. This will naturally spring out to be normal. This will be our normal life. So to me, just to close, I'd say, the best thing we can do now is to let go, and just allow nature to take its course. We are already assured life is never going to be extinguished. This earth is always going to be here. It's a matter now of making a decision. Really is a matter of deciding, because the time is now. And there is no real time to waste. We don't want to waste any more cycles around the sun. We want to start acting. So we also need to observe. We need observation of what's going on, particularly for those who are newly awakening. They need to observe and take time to understand, what's happening here, with some, without being sort of manipulated in any way. And we need to be dispassionate about events. You might think, now that's weird. Why would I say dispassionate? But if we get too overly passionate or so wired, so angry and about what's happening, then that's exactly what the power brokers want. You're then easy meat. We need to see what's happening in the world as a more objective thing, but we need to be passionate about our purpose. There's a big difference there. We don't get. I know it's natural for humans. Initially, when you're finding out about some of the stuff, you will get angry. That's absolutely right. You should. It's a release. But eventually we've got to come into the point where we can look at the world and we don't get so disturbed in our mind, even though I know it looks heinous and horrific. We have to this is where we use our mind and our heart together and just look at it with more sense of, it's interesting. It's almost like this play, like you would be watching a theatre. But we do need to get passionate about our purpose and passionate about creating a better world and that which we wish to see. So on that note, thank you for listening. I will stop sharing. Thanks for coming, everyone, and hope you got something out of that. You still with us, Gerald? You're muted.
Here we go. Yeah, well, thank you for that, Tony. That was very heartfelt, and yeah, I mean that was a big picture that you painted, and the thing about it is it ties everything together, so it shows everything as connected, which keeps reminding us, of the connection of everything, which is, I think, really important. And I think this is where, like as you say, we are encouraged, and this is, my belief is it's a philosophy, in fact, which has arisen, which is called the positivist philosophy, which came out, has become very strong, and is the philosophy that's backing up the so-called science, right? And this philosophy is really also called reductionism, meaning that it reduces everything to its parts. And therefore, the idea of science is to, you don't study everything, you study the little parts. And we've got so used to that we're looking at the parts and we're not seeing the connections. I mean, that's the whole thing about medicine, for instance, is that each person who goes to medical school, they learn about parts. They don't learn the whole. And therefore, when they go into practice, they become specialists in a knee specialist or a, ear specialist or whatever. But they don't see a person as a holistic thing, and it's almost impossible for them to. And I think that's why we're having so much problems, because we're looking at things in the wrong way.
Yes, we're looking at it through the wrong lens, and we've got the
Yeah.
wrong context. Like you say, reductionism is a context that we've been put into through education.
Mm.
And so that makes us very materially focused,
Yeah.
and we're always looking outside for the answer and
Mm.
breaking things down into little pieces instead of actually looking inside as well
Mm.
and expanding out, right? Because the
Yes.
most energy comes from, opposite of what you call the opposite of reductionism would be expansionism or something.
Expansionism,
But
holism. Yeah, that's right.
holism,
Mm.
yeah, and holistic living, and we've lost that, and also the whole science doctrine
Mm.
of Darwinism and the survival of the fittest. This is the bench.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
basis
The,
of our
the the
education
fight.
system.
Yes, that's right.
The fight, yeah, the fight
We have
for life.
Yes.
We've got
But
to
when you actually
struggle
look at
and
life, you actually, if you care to study life, you will see that it's actually a symbiotic. Animals and plants, animals between each other help each other. They're feeding on each other. Well, they're not feeding. That one helps the other to feed, and of course they feed on each other as well. I mean, they've got to survive. But you see a lot more of um, cooperation, because only through cooperation can their environment be maintained, and the numbers maintained so that they don't kind of die out and things like that. So we've been taught from a very militaristic point of view that everything needs to fight, and we need to fight nature, and nature fights with us, and we fight diseases, and diseases attack us, and all that sort of thing. And it's
yeah,
interesting.
and that is a perfect example of decentralization.
Yeah.
The whole symbiosis of nature is a
Mm.
perfect cooperative, decentralized reality.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is the ecosystem that if we bring those, that's the modeling, right, of nature that I was talking about. We could bring those into our businesses and into our homes, and we could operate like that. We would always be thinking with others and cooperating and sharing,
Yes.
paying it forward
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
back. And,
Yeah. Well, I was
it's,
reading an interesting insight the other day saying that if we became more cooperative and more giving to each other, there would be less and less need for money, because we'd come back to, say, within a family, right? Your brother or somebody says, "Hey, can I borrow your car?" Or, "Can I, whatever?" You say, "Yep, yep," and so we would have, if we considered everyone as family, then there'd be much less need for money for transactions, because
true.
there would be trust. The trust would be already there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if we don't have to pay, or if we pay a small, if you like a kind of like a GST type thing. We
Yeah.
abolished income tax, and we paid a small sales tax on transactions,
Mm.
and we didn't have to pay mortgages, and we didn't have to pay for power and all this,
Mm.
which I would, which I advocate for. Yeah, and the need for money would be virtually negligible. And
Yes.
eventually, I think we will go to a no money. I think eventually, maybe in no 200 or 500 years, but I think eventually we will get to a pure no money system one day.
It could be.
Uh, it's, we can't jump to that right
Oh
now.
yeah, sure.
Not when this fight is on now. It's simply not going to work because the systems that we have, we're too. There's too many people that are too conditioned to needing money. So we
Yes.
just have to
Yes.
find the next best step is having people having sufficient funds that they need,
Yes.
everybody, no one
Yes.
being left behind.
Mm.
Then that is a natural transition towards no money.
Yes. Yes.
Going cold turkey on money, I think, would cause way more
Uh,
chaos and
yeah.
problems
Well, we
than we
haven't
have
we
now.
haven't got that trust in place yet, And so what what the blockchain is it's transferring trust from central institutions to a to code, right? So it's
Mm.
called trustless, but you're transferring trust to the algorithms. And as you say, at some point that decentralization will work to such an extent that we can let go of that trust and trust each other, and we have full trust in each other because no one is deprived, and when no one is deprived, no one will try and outdo the other or steal from the other. Yeah. And
Mm.
therefore there is no
Yeah,
need to think, oh,
there's
that
no
guy's gonna
need for
steal
them to
from
do it.
me. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right, because everybody's sharing everybody else's, key things. There's no strive for competition, which is another part of Darwinism, the whole
Yes.
competition thing.
Yes. Yes.
No, we remove that out of the equation, and people have no need to fight
um,
each other for
yeah.
something that we
Yeah.
already own.
Well,
It's
that's
it's
right.
it's kind of like it's quite utopia. I mean, a lot of people call me an idealist or a utopian,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I now say, well, thanks very much. I actually think, well, if that's what you think,
Well,
then great.
if you can dream
I'll
it,
take it.
if you can dream it
Yeah,
and you can visualize it, then it can be achieved. I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I just thanks to people who came on today: Susan, Maggie, Carolyn, as always, and Tahira. Good to see you. I appreciate the feedback and comments, and I love that. Some people get it. Um, I enjoy. I've been researching this for so long. It's becoming almost second nature for me now, and I do enjoy um, presenting these ideals. Yeah, but I realize there's still quite a long way to go, and I'm under no illusion that people are losing hope. People are losing their homes, their lives, their health, all their money,
Hmm.
and we're in a very, very difficult time. And in no way is well, I think it's easy, what we have to go through, even though, getting
Hmm.
back to basics is simple in its in as it is in its reality, but getting there is not simple.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
It takes a lot of um,
Yeah.
you know
But I think the
uh,
more we become aware of the centralization problem, and I think the centralization problem that you brought up was so much part of our upbringing and so much part of our way of life that we actually couldn't see it. It's like a fish in
mm,
water, it can't see the water. And so you
mm,
accepted it. Is I think you even said that, we accept it because that's all we know. And I think the
yeah,
big break about Bitcoin and blockchain and all those things, it made us realize that, hey, that we are in a situation where we are centralized, and we have an alternative that could be decentralization. And once we saw that, wow, then I think once you see that, your whole worldview changes, because you realize, yeah, that's what was happening, and this is what could
Well,
happen. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember very well when I was researching blockchain in the
Yeah.
early days, and
Mm.
I saw the impact that decentralized blockchain could have on society,
Mm.
and it was like a major light bulb moment. And I actually, when I saw it, it was profound. That's what
Yes.
really made me go deep into researching this.
Mm.
I realize it's less than perfect now, and
Oh,
what's going to appear in the next few months is not going to be
it's growing
perfect, but it's going to
pains.
be,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
it's
growing pain, and I see some people giving up. They
yeah,
give up
yeah.
on it because they see something they don't like in it, and so they ditch the whole thing, throw the baby with the bathwater out,
Mm.
and I think that's a mistake.
Mm.
Um, no one ever said this was going to be an easy
No, I mean,
process.
such a radical. This is a huge radical shift in awareness, and it's not. Yeah, it just cannot be easy. There's no way, a simple way to do it.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
but
But I
yeah,
think I think the worst is in some ways is behind us. Well, we know a lot more what we're dealing with now,
yeah,
and I think a lot of good people are really doing doing great work, coming together and building
mm,
the new models, new
yeah,
societies, the basis of anyway,
yeah,
foundations for new ways of living. People are rebelling in a peaceful way, which I think if
yeah.
there's going to be a protest, it needs to be with a lot of people and it needs to be done peacefully.
Mm.
And then that has a powerful impact on the
Well,
rest of the world.
that's right. Like various philosophers have said, or even Buckminster Fuller, he said, well, you can't change a system by fighting it. You change it by bringing in something that's better, and then people will
Yeah.
adopt it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, build a new system so the existing one becomes obsolete, I think he
Yes.
said.
Yeah. Something like
Yeah.
that.
And that's exactly right. And that's what I think we are doing. And that's what I think a lot of other
Yeah.
people are doing as well.
Unfortunately, there
So,
are also bad actors who are jumping in and who are manipulating the system, and mucking around with it. And they're not necessarily the top centralist bad actors. They're also little players as bad actors who are mucking up the system. And but we just need to be aware of that, and be safe, and
yeah,
and keep learning.
yeah, yep. That's all we can do. Well, thanks, everyone.
Well, thanks a
Thanks
lot,
again
Tony.
to
Yeah.
Fiona. Thank you, Fiona. Caroline, thank you as well. The two Carolines. Um, it was yeah, I appreciate people's attention and attending this, and yeah, and yeah, until next time, I guess we
Yeah.
will see you then.
Yeah. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, great weekend.